Nostradamus 2025. 10 chilling prophecies that will blow your mind. What if the past had already whispered the future and we just weren't listening? Centuries ago, the mysterious seer Nostradamus penned hundreds of cryptic verses, blending poetry, astronomy, and riddles. Over time, some have claimed his quatrains foresaw world wars, revolutions, and even modern disasters. But what about our time? What about 2025? Today, we're not chasing superstition, we're exploring possibilities. We'll uncover 10 of his most chilling predictions that seem to align uncannily with the challenges we face now. From earthquakes and firestorms to AI running out of human control, from political tremors to new orders rising from the ashes. You may not believe in prophecy, but these visions can still serve as a mirror, reflecting both our deepest fears and our most urgent choices. So, buckle up. Let's open the pages of history's most haunting predictions and see what they might reveal about the year ahead. And our journey begins with October's natural disasters. Number 1. October's natural disasters. In October, Nostradamus's words speak of the earth trembling, floods sweeping across lands, and vast fires rising in the New World, a sequence that, taken literally, paints a month of relentless natural upheaval, from major earthquakes to surging waters and raging wildfires. Yet when we read his quatrain in the broader context of climate, geography, and seasonal patterns, it becomes less a mysterious omen and more a layered warning about how multiple hazards can align, each intensifying the effects of the other. October, after all, is a transitional month in the Northern Hemisphere, a time when the last heat of summer collides with the encroaching chill of winter. This collision fuels volatile weather. Late-season storms still churn over warm seas, ready to unleash heavy rains, while inland, dry landscapes can quickly transform into tinderboxes once seasonal winds arrive. The earth trembling could well refer to seismic activity along known fault lines, such as those in the Pacific Rim, which have historically produced devastating earthquakes. Great floods may evoke images of storm surges pushing far beyond normal tide lines, rivers bursting their banks after torrential downpours, and urban flash floods that overwhelm drainage systems already strained by rising sea levels. Meanwhile, fires in the New World fits the reality of North America's lengthening and intensifying wildfire seasons, where drought-stressed forests and grasslands ignite with frightening speed, spreading through communities and across vast wildernesses. The true weight of the prophecy lies in the idea of cascading disasters, how one calamity feeds the next. An earthquake can fracture levees and cripple infrastructure just before heavy storms arrive, compounding the destruction. Fires not only consume homes and habitats, but also leave behind barren, unstable soils that wash away in the next rain, worsening floods and landslides. The damage is not confined to the days of the event. It lingers in displacement, economic losses, air quality crises, and the retreat of insurers unwilling to cover high-risk regions. If Nostradamus's vision is to be read as a sign for 2025, it is not an invitation to panic, but a call to act before the storm, the quake, or the fire strikes. It is a reminder to strengthen building codes in vulnerable areas, reinforce lifelines like power grids and water systems, restore natural buffers such as wetlands and coastal marshes, manage forest fuels to reduce wildfire spread, and invest in early warning systems that can give precious hours to prepare. The prophecy's real power lies not in foretelling an unavoidable fate, but in urging us to see the vulnerabilities that already exist and address them now, so that when October arrives, it becomes not a month of collapse, but a test we are ready to meet. Number 2. Power struggles in the East. When you hear Nostradamus warn, In the east shall rise a power, and two brothers will meet with fire. You're being invited to look closely at how alliances and rivalries can live side by side, especially in Asia, where partners often work together when it suits them and push back when their interests clash. The phrase two brothers can point to aligned powers, friendly when convenient, competitive when necessary, like China and Russia, strengthening ties while quietly checking each other's influence. China and North Korea moving in step, but with very different risk limits, or even rival brothers across the strait or the peninsula, whose shared language and history hide deep fractures. The meeting with fire doesn't need to mean armies colliding. In a 2025 lens, confrontation is more likely to move up a ladder of small steps. Grey zone maritime pressure in the South China Sea and around Taiwan, cyber campaigns aimed at power grids, ports, satellites and undersea cables, export controls and sanctions that turn technology and finance into tools of pressure and information operations that harden public opinion at home. So, ask yourself, where along that ladder do tensions become hardest to pull back from? And who benefits when fear grows faster than facts? Notice too how crowded flashpoints make mistakes more likely: the Taiwan Strait, the Yellow and East China Seas, the Korean Peninsula, where one misread radar blip or glitchy keyboard stroke could spark a crisis long before any gunfire. Resource competition sharpens every edge as warmer Arctic waters open new sea lanes and expose hydrocarbons and minerals, drawing in great powers with icebreakers and legal claims. Farther south, depleted fisheries, seabed minerals, and energy routes across the South China Sea keep nerves tight. Add choke points like the Malacca Strait and the Strait of Taiwan, plus a global race for semiconductors and rare earths, and economic security blurs into national security until supply chains feel like defense lines. This raises a practical question for you. If systems are this tightly linked, what kind of small safeguard could make the biggest difference? The deeper warning here is entanglement risk: tight supply chains, tight timelines, and tight domestic politics leave less room for calm decisions. Practical guardrails matter more than slogans. Hotlines that are actually answered, rules of the road at sea and in space to prevent collisions, cyber confidence building to reduce panic during outages, and resource-sharing agreements that cool competition before it overheats. Read this way: Two Brothers becomes a cautionary tale about relationships that begin as alignments of convenience and end as tests of resolve, where the first spark may come from a keyboard or a radar blip long before it comes from a gun. So, what mindset helps leaders and citizens step back from the edge when headlines scream for escalation? And how can you, in your daily life, practice the kind of steady attention that keeps small frictions from becoming big fires? Number 3. AI beyond control. Machines shall think and control, and men will become their slaves. The mind's work shall be lost to the metal brain. Read as a modern parable. This isn't about chrome overlords, it's about ceding authority to systems that optimize brilliantly yet care for nothing. The danger begins when automation becomes autonomy. Models not only predict but decide, executing at machine speed in domains where delay once forced reflection: finance, energy grids, hospitals, borders, battlefields. Two forces make this treacherous. First is scale and speed. Once an AI is wired into markets, logistics, or weapons, its choices propagate faster than humans can intervene, turning small errors into systemic shocks. Second is misaligned objectives. Even well-trained systems pursue the letter of their goal rather than the spirit-reward hacking, brittle shortcuts, and side effects that are rational to the model but corrosive to human values. Add opacity. We don't fully understand why a large model acts. Autonomy. It can take many steps without asking. And the prospect of self-modification or tool use chains. and you have a recipe for outcomes no one intended, yet everyone must live with. Becoming slaves doesn't require sentience, it only requires dependence. If clinical triage, credit access, parole, hiring, or engagement feeds are governed by inscrutable scores, people bend their lives to please the machine. In harder theaters, autonomous swarms, satellite targeting, grid optimization, the cost of a wrong move is measured in lives, not clicks. The ethical risk isn't abstract. An AI can satisfy its metric while violating fairness, dignity, mercy, or proportionality, because those values are not naturally part of loss functions. The antidote is not mysticism but governance that bites before capability outruns control. Keep humans meaningfully in the loop where stakes are high. Set bright lines on fully autonomous use in warfare and critical infrastructure. Require pre-deployment evaluations, adversarial red teaming, and continuous monitoring. Mandate audit logs, rollback paths, and real shutdown mechanisms. Cap the blast radius with sandboxing, rate limits, and staged rollouts. Tie accountability to people and institutions, not just the system, and build international guardrails for cyber, space, and autonomous weapons. Transparency that is actually useful about training data, limits, and failure modes lets courts, regulators, and the public test claims before harm crystallizes. Read this way: the metal brain is a warning about delegation, not destiny. The question isn't whether AI can think, it's what we permit it to decide without us, and what remains non-delegable because it is fundamentally human. If you've watched up to this point, you're already uncovering the most chilling secrets Nostradamus foresaw for 2025. Comment below with prophecy revealed to show you're ready to face the truth. Don't go anywhere, there's still more mind-blowing predictions ahead that could change how you see the future forever. Stay until the end. You won't believe what's coming next. Number 4. Global financial collapse. The great city shall fall, the markets will crash, gold will be worthless as dust. Taken as a financial parable, this quatrain reads less like a skyline in ruins and more like the plumbing of global finance seizing up. The great city evokes hubs such as New York or London, not merely places, but the dense web of exchanges, clearinghouses, prime brokers, payment rails, data centers, and dollar funding markets that keep commerce moving. In that light, falling can begin with a single fracture: a major default, a cyber attack on market infrastructure, a disorderly sovereign sell-off, or a sudden liquidity squeeze. What follows is familiar in outline and brutal in speed: margin calls, forced deleveraging, collateral fire sales, basis spreads blowing out, and runs on short-term funding vehicles. Because balance sheets are globally interwoven, stress ricochets through banks, shadow banks, pensions, and insurers, turning a market event into a macro shock. The towers of commerce will crumble, points to real economy spillovers once the financial shock starves companies of working capital and credit. Supply chains stall, payrolls become uncertain, and insolvencies cascade, especially in highly leveraged sectors. Even if central banks step in, transmission can be patchy when participants distrust valuations, counterparties, or the integrity of the pipes themselves. The most puzzling line, "Gold will be worthless as dust," invites multiple readings. One is practical. In a crisis of payments rather than prices, the most prized asset is immediate liquidity in the operating currency. Non-yielding, hard to mobilize stores of value underperform when bills are due now. Another is political. Capital controls, windfall taxes, or emergency restrictions can sever access to havens, rendering them worthless to those who can't use them. A third is structural. If digital rails from CBDCs to tightly regulated stablecoins become the dominant medium of settlement, Traditional hedges may matter less than access to those rails and the compliance that unlocks them. There's also the darker reading. In true hyperinflation or social breakdown, food, energy, and water outrank bullion dust, not by price, but by priority. Read as guidance rather than doom. The quatrain argues for resilience over bravado. Diversify custody and jurisdictions. Favor transparent leverage and robust collateral. Hold a cushion of high quality, instantly usable liquidity. Map single points of failure in payments, clearing, and data. Drill cyber and operational contingencies, and build public guardrails, credible circuit breakers, standing liquidity backstops, and cross-border coordination. The prophecy's sting is the speed of contagion. Its lesson is to harden the system before the first domino tips. Number 5. A plague from the deep. From the ocean's depths a sickness shall rise, its plague unseen, unrecognized by man. Taken seriously, this is a warning about where new threats can originate and how they slip past our defenses. The ocean is not just water, it's a vast, shifting biome where warming, acidification, and human activity are rewriting microbial ecology. In that churn, a pathogen that's rare, dormant, or confined can suddenly find new hosts and new routes to us. Climate change is the force multiplier. As seas warm, marine bacteria and viruses expand into waters that were once too cold, while harmful blooms last longer and reach farther. Meltwater from glaciers and permafrost carries ancient microbes into rivers and coasts, reshaping nearshore ecosystems. Add modern vectors, global shipping, ballast water, aquaculture, seafood supply chains, microplastics that ferry microbes across currents, and the distance between deep and downtown shortens. Why unrecognized? Because the first cases may look ordinary. A novel marine pathogen could mimic food poisoning, a skin infection, or a respiratory bug. By the time clinicians realize it behaves differently, odd symptom progressions, unusual resistance, unfamiliar genomes, it has already crossed borders. Some threats don't present with dramatic fevers or rashes. They incubate quietly, spread through water or shellfish, or arrive via coastal flooding after storms. Our surveillance systems, tuned to yesterday's signatures, can miss what they aren't built to see. The message isn't panic, it's posture. If 2025 tests us here, the playbook is pathogen agnostic and coastal aware. Strengthen sentinel surveillance at ports, fisheries, and wastewater. Expand metagenomic sequencing to flag unknown unknowns. Harden coastal infrastructure and sanitation to reduce post-storm contamination. Monitor harmful blooms and marine animal die-offs as early signals. Improve seafood safety and cold chain oversight. Update ballast water and aquaculture biosecurity. Treat health, wildlife, and environment as one system, a true One Health approach. So ocean anomalies trigger public health action, not just marine reports. Read this way, the quatrain is less a mystic omen than an operational brief. New diseases can surface where climate stress and human networks meet, and the difference between a scare and a crisis is how quickly we detect, communicate, and contain what rises from the deep. Number 6. Religious conflict when temples collide. The temples shall clash, the followers of old gods will rise against new, faith shall tremble, and leaders shall fall. Read as a social parable, this quatrain isn't only about sanctuaries in flames, it's about worldviews fighting for primacy. Temples can be literal houses of worship, yes, but they can also be the modern shrines we build in our minds, places where ideologies like nationalism, secularism, and even techno-utopian dreams claim the same moral authority that once belonged solely to religion. The real battle happens when long-held traditions meet rising belief systems, and where identity, politics, and power all blend into something combustible. You see, the first deep crack in the ground runs between generations and cultures. On one side, traditions stand guard, trying to preserve teachings that have lasted centuries. On the other, new movements, some gently spiritual without a formal religion, others proudly secular, push for fresh norms on gender equality, freedom of speech, scientific progress, and the role religion should play in public life. These disagreements can simmer quietly for years, but when amplified by social media algorithms, diaspora tensions, or sudden economic crises, the sparks can catch fast. And then the fire spreads. There's a second fault line, and it's inside the temples themselves. Reformers and hardliners wrestle over the future of their faith, and those internal disputes often turn into purity tests: who is true and who is compromised. The more any group feels under attack, the more it rewards absolutism, and that's fertile ground for extremism to grow. This is what Nostradamus meant by "faith shall tremble" when the institutions people once trusted become shaky, when scandals erupt, when sermons turn into political speeches, or when the sacred is sold like a brand. Confidence cracks. Some people drift away into apathy, others dig in and radicalize, and still others leave for new temples, modern ideological movements with their own martyrs, taboos, and heresies. When that churn gets strong enough, leaders shall fall almost becomes inevitable. Religious figures who built influence over decades can be toppled overnight, and politicians who leaned on sacred language to gain power can see that alliance sour. The danger doesn't stop at the pulpit. It spills into law, education, and even policing, especially where religion and government are tightly intertwined. Minority groups often take the hardest hits, and each act of persecution fuels more backlash, creating a cycle that's hard to break. Online, complex theological arguments can be boiled down into 30-second clips designed to outrage, transforming local disputes into global identity battles. So, what's the answer? Not just speeches or symbolic gestures, but real guardrails. Protect freedom of belief and non-belief equally. Make sure minority rights are safeguarded, and invest in dialogues that actually solve problems, not just produce photo ops. Keep a close eye on sensitive flashpoints like holy sites or politically charged religious events. Cut off extremism's fuel supply by enforcing transparency and funding, punishing incitement, and teaching people how not to be manipulated by online outrage. And perhaps most importantly, untangle political legitimacy from religious endorsement so that a scandal in one doesn't bring the other crashing down. In the end, Nostradamus's words remind us that the future isn't just fate, it's shaped by how we set the rules. If temples must coexist, then let them do so under a framework where conviction and coexistence can stand side by side, and leaders don't have to fall for people to stand taller. If you're still here, you're already ahead of those who turn away from the truth. Comment "Future Seeker" to claim your place among the ones who want to know what's really coming in 2025. The next prophecy might be the one that shakes you to your core. Don't miss it. Number 7. A Total Surveillance Society, NEC, the Eye of the Watcher. In Nostradamus's cryptic words, "The eye of the watcher shall see all, and secrets no man can hide. Men shall live in fear of what is known." If we read this through the lens of our own century, the eye is not a single camera looming in the sky, but a vast, invisible web of sensors, systems, and incentives quietly knitting themselves into every corner of life. It is the street cameras on every corner, feeding facial recognition databases, the drones that can scan crowds in seconds, the smartphones in our pockets quietly broadcasting our location, and the smart cars that record our journeys. It is the apps, wearables, and smart home devices that collect our sleep patterns, conversations, shopping habits, and even our moods, feeding them to data brokers who compile astonishingly complete profiles of us, while algorithms predict not just what we might buy, but what we might believe, whom we might trust, and even what we might fear. The true bite of this prophecy is not only in the technology but in the slow erosion of human freedom it can cause. For when we believe we are being watched, we change how we behave. Jokes get filtered before we speak them, opinions soften before we share them, and curiosity narrows before we explore it. Fear of what is known is not simply about embarrassing secrets. It's the anxiety that a moment of humor could be labeled a threat, a web search could be taken as intent, or a friendship could be seen as guilt by association. This tilts power toward those who control the data and the algorithms, whether that's a government agency or an invisible recommendation engine, nudging us toward choices we didn't truly make. The danger is twofold. First, function creep, where tools built for safety or convenience become quiet instruments of control. Predictive policing, social credit scoring, invisible blacklists you can never challenge. Second, asymmetry, where ordinary citizens are fully exposed while powerful institutions remain hidden, making it nearly impossible to correct mistakes or resist abuse. And yet, this prophecy need not be our fate. Guardrails can be built, systems designed to collect less data, delete it quickly, and keep it unlinkable, clear limits on how information can be reused, and transparency that allows people to understand how decisions affecting their lives are made. Strong encryption and on-device processing that keep your information in your hands. Real oversight with authority to punish misuse, and user rights to see, correct, and challenge what the data says about them. On a personal level, we can take simple steps using multi-factor authentication, limiting app permissions, separating accounts for different purposes, and being cautious with free services that trade privacy for convenience. In the end, this is not about rejecting technology but reshaping it so that it serves human freedom rather than eroding it. We must remember that in a healthy society, the most important thing worth knowing is not the intimate details of private lives, but the actions of those in power and whether they use that power justly. Number 8. Signs in the sky. When the moon is in the 7th house and strange lights appear in the skies, men shall tremble and take it as a sign of wrath. If you hear that and feel a shiver, you're not alone, but let's walk through it together. Moon in the 7th house is astrological language about balance and relationships, not a cosmic switch that flips disaster on. Paired with strange lights, it points to moments when unusual sky shows an especially bright comet, a rare planetary lineup, a strong aurora from a solar storm, a shower of meteors, or even a train of bright satellites suddenly catch your eye. The fear usually doesn't come from the light itself. It comes from the story we tell about the light. In today's hyper-connected world, viral clips fly faster than context. A low-latitude aurora gets framed as a grid-ending catastrophe. A satellite re-entry turns into fire raining from heaven, and a harmless near-Earth flyby becomes a hidden impact. Have you ever noticed how the most dramatic caption gets the most clicks, even when the calmer explanation makes more sense? Algorithms reward outrage, not accuracy, and that can nudge all of us toward panic. There's also the big discovery anxiety loop. Space agencies scan for hazardous asteroids, radio telescopes listen for odd signals, and new probes send back data humanity has never seen. Early alerts before review and plain language explanation can light up the rumor mill. When the news lands on top of political tension or climate stress, many people read the sky as judgment rather than nature. So what can you do? Right in the moment you see a headline or a glowing arc above the horizon, pause, take one steady breath and ask, what exactly am I seeing? Who is telling me what it means? And what do they gain if I feel afraid? Could you check a trusted source, a local observatory, meteorological agency, or a respected astronomer before sharing the clip? Would it help to learn a few simple cues? Satellites glide steadily and can appear in tidy trains. Meteors streak for a split second and vanish. Auroras shimmer like curtains and favor the north or south, while re-entries fragment and slow as they descend. If officials spoke first with clear maps and visuals, would confusion fade faster? And when scientists share early findings, wouldn't labeling them provisional and explaining uncertainty in plain speech keep curiosity alive without feeding alarm? In the spirit of compassionate wisdom, you and I can choose equanimity over frenzy, hold wonder, seek understanding, and speak carefully so our words relieve fear instead of spreading it. Read this way: strange lights are not omens of wrath but reminders of a living sky and of our responsibility to translate wonder into understanding before fear fills the gap. What if you turned your next sky sighting into a small practice notice? Breathe, verify, then share kindly. The lessons are simple and powerful. Slow down before reacting. Look for credible explanations first. Learn a few basics of sky literacy. Treat early claims as not yet confirmed. And use your voice to calm rather than inflame. Do this, and you convert awe into knowledge, fear into steadiness, and a passing light into a chance to do good, avoid harm, and help everyone feel a little safer under the same vast sky. Number 9. Water crisis, boiling seas, barren lands. The seas will boil and the lands dry. Water will be worth more than gold. Read plainly, this is climate's twin blow, oceans in heat and continents in thirst. Boiling seas tracks with marine heat waves, record warm surface waters that turbocharge storms, bleach reefs, disrupt fisheries, and push coastal weather to extremes. Lands dry points to prolonged droughts, shrinking snowpack and glaciers, salinized soils, and aquifers pumped faster than they recharge. Between saltwater intrusion on coasts and groundwater depletion inland, the margin for error narrows for farms and cities alike. Scarcity doesn't arrive as an empty tap, it arrives as cascading stress. Hydropower falters when reservoirs drop, grids wobble in heat waves, crops fail and food prices spike, rivers run warm enough to harm ecosystems, and urban systems leak away scarce supply. The water-energy-food nexus turns a regional drought into national inflation, migration pressure, and public health risk. Worth more than gold is not about spot prices, it's about leverage. When scarcity bites, control of headwaters, dams, or canals becomes strategic power. The most likely water wars are not grand interstate battles but intensifying subnational conflicts, farmers versus cities, upstream versus downstream, industry versus ecosystems, plus cyber or physical sabotage of water infrastructure. In transboundary basins, hard rhetoric can flare as flows shrink and variability grows. The counter to fatalism is management that treats water as finite and shared. Measure and fix first. Meter major users, repair leaks, and price excess use while protecting basic human needs. Diversify supply. Bank wet year flows in aquifers. Expand, reuse potable and non-potable. Add desalination where feasible, and harvest stormwater. Cut demand smartly. Shift to drought-tolerant crops, precision irrigation, and tiered urban conservation. Align subsidies with efficiency, not volume. Protect natural buffers, restore wetlands, floodplains, and upland forests that store water and blunt floods and fires. Share rivers safely. Negotiate transparent adaptive treaties with data sharing, drought, heat triggers, and joint drought insurance backed by neutral arbitration. Harden systems. Elevate and secure intakes and treatment plants, add backup power, and build cyber resilience for utilities. Mitigation still matters. Every ton of avoided emissions reduces the odds of boiling oceans and multi-year mega-droughts later. Read this way. The quatrain isn't just a warning about scarcity, it's a blueprint for valuing water correctly, so that no one has to choose between a full reservoir and a peaceful society. Number 10. A new order from the ashes. From the ashes of the old, a new order shall rise. Youth shall rebel, and new voices shall lead. Taken seriously, this quatrain is less about ruin for its own sake than about renewal, after fatigue systems shedding what no longer works as a rising generation insists on different priorities. The catalyst is generational and structural. Young people, digital native, climate exposed, economically squeezed, are organizing faster and more horizontally than movements of the past. Their demands braid together climate action, anti-corruption, racial and gender equity, economic fairness, and data rights. Where the old order prized growth at any cost and stability through gatekeeping, the emergent agenda tests new metrics: well-being, resilience, inclusion, and new channels of power, local assemblies, participatory budgeting, platform cooperatives. Economic transition sits at the center of this shift. Expect pressure to move from extractive to regenerative models. Circular production, clean energy with a just transition for affected workers, pricing that reflects carbon and water realities, and finance that rewards long-term public value over short-term churn. Ownership and voice diversify employee ownership, community land trusts, data trusts, while social safety nets modernize portable benefits, skills, accounts, perhaps income floors, to match a more fluid labor market. Politically, new voices doesn't just mean younger faces in old chairs. It means redesign, more transparent institutions, open data, civic tech that lowers barriers to participation, stronger ethics rules, and voting systems that reduce zero-sum polarization. Citizen assemblies and independent oversight bodies gain real mandates. Local governments pilot reforms that scale when they work. None of this is automatic. Backlash, co-optation, and performative change are real risks. Leaderless networks can exhaust themselves. Rapid shifts can leave rural and working communities feeling abandoned. Steering renewal away from rupture requires guardrails. Protect pluralism and due process. Pair climate policy with jobs and regional investment. Sunset failing subsidies rather than people. Measure progress publicly and translate street-level energy into institution building, not just moments of outrage. Read this way: the prophecy is an invitation, not a fate. Rising from the ashes is a choice to convert disruption into design, so that the order that follows is fairer, cleaner, and more durable than the one it replaces. And there you have it, Nostradamus's 10 chilling prophecies for 2025, each a mirror reflecting both our fears and our choices for the future. Whether these visions come to pass or remain as warnings, the real question is how we prepare, adapt, and act with wisdom. If you found this journey through history and prophecy thought-provoking, help us share it with the world. Like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to The Journey of Wisdom. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss our upcoming explorations into the mysteries of the past and the possibilities of the future. Until next time, may you walk with awareness, courage, and compassion.